Hello lovelies, the Daggerheart playtest is out, has been for a day or two at this point because I'm late to the party. You know me, always failing at clout chasing. So what's the best way to learn a new system? It's probably to create a character and to run a quick combat. That's a good way to get a feel for how the system works, whether you can create the kinds of characters that you really want to, and how the rules and that character interact and behave when you put them through the most testing and trying part of any game. So let's have a go. Let me just shrink myself.
There we go, that's better.
I kid. Alright, so here we have a block of unformed clay. Let's try and make a character. So going through the booklet, they have a downloadable version on drive-through now. You know, you're struck by all the usual stuff. It's slightly less hectoring in tone than Candela Obscura was, but all the kind of bullshit you would expect is still there. Safety tools suck. They will always suck. They don't really have a place where they make sense. They did include something in their list called an open door policy, and that is the only one anyone should be using, if any at all. And that basically says anyone is welcome to sit down and play, and anyone is welcome to leave at any point. And that really is the only safety tool anyone with at least a slight amount of normal socialization should really need. The game system overall gives the impression that it has taken far too many cues from Powered by the Apocalypse and Blades in the Dark, because all the different character types have their own sheets, and you're kind of hemmed in by class even more so than you are in, you know, traditional D&D games. This is a huge pain in the arse if you want to play anything off the beaten track in any way, shape or form, and I am a difficult bastard. There is no getting around that. You're also required to have cards with your powers and capabilities on. You don't really need cards, you could just write down your powers, but they seem to be trying to sell you on that, so you're already being upsold, and the game isn't even out yet. So there's that. Now, my standard character type that I play when I'm playing something like Baldur's Gate or whatever is a fighter rogue multi-class. I like to be a little bit more survivable in a fight, and I like the options for sneaking and picking locks and so on that the rogue gives me, because, you know, if I can get into something and pilfer what's in there without having to have a fight, you know, that's all good. Can I create a fighter slash rogue in this game system? No, not really. It's not really an option here. So of the available options, I decided on a rogue, and I decided on what's called a Nightwalker, though I didn't really want to. The subsets of rogue, one of them is like syndicate, which means that you're good at dealing with people, wheeling and dealing, ducking and diving, that's that sort of thing. And the Nightwalker is more your traditional rogue slash assassin, but magic, which I was kind of trying to avoid. You choose heritage, which is, you know, race by any other name, which I chose for human, and then you choose your community, which is where you were brought up. It's not bad to have these two things, but it's, you know, obvious that they're slipping and sliding away from the idea of fantasy races by picking heritage, and by picking community, you're allowing people to pick something outside of the expected norm for whatever race you might be talking about, which again is all well and good, but these choices are essentially largely meaningless. So I chose Slyborn for my community, which is a kind of evasive way of saying brought up in the criminal underworld, the back alleys and so on. It's a weird spelling as well. It's not Slyborn, B-O-R-N, but Slyborn, B-O-R-N-E. So like you've been carried around by that, not that you were born into it. Are they trying to avoid the implications of innateness and fate perhaps being tied to whatever material situation you were born into? Possibly I'm reading into it too much, but it seems odd, and all of these choices stack up. Heritage, safety tools, Slyborn, misspelt, misunderstood. You have a bunch of statistics: agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge. Each one has a list of moves, just like Blades in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse, but they then take pains to tell you that these moves don't actually apply. So I'm left wondering why bother listing those things after the statistics at all if they don't matter. There's a lot of decisions like that and a lot of contradictions, but it is a playtest document. So you get to distribute stats. You get a +2 in one stat, you get a +1 in another, +1 in another, -1 in another, and the rest are at 0. When you're playing a character type like a rogue, your choices are fairly obvious. Though with the bonuses and penalties being so minor, there isn't really a strong way to differentiate one character from another, particularly if you both choose the same type overall. But the bonuses and penalties are so minor that it doesn't necessarily matter all that much. You'll be rolling 2d12 and adding them together to do things. A +2 bonus on that is effectively worth slightly less than a +2 bonus in 5th edition D&D would be. So again, it's a bit hard to differentiate your character in any real, meaningful, fundamental way. You have an evasion score that is determined by your class. Okay. You have hit points, which you may not actually suffer any damage to when you're hit. It depends. There are damage thresholds in 3 settings. Weapons do a damage score that is compared against these thresholds. If it's over the minor threshold, you take 1 hit point. If it's over the moderate threshold, you take 2 hit points. If it's over the major threshold, you take 3 hit points. And the same for baddies. This doesn't seem like enough damage to me, and throws up some problems, which we'll get to, I guess. You also have hope and fear. Hope goes up to a maximum of 5. Every time you roll higher on your hope die than your fear die, or when you roll a crit, you get hope, and then you spend hope to activate certain capabilities. The capabilities are where I guess characters get a bit of differentiation, but because you have to activate them, because you have to spend to use them, they're not really innate differences between characters, and so again it's very hard to differentiate your character from other characters. Proficiency mostly seems to apply to weapons, and it determines the number of dice that you roll for damage. So for most people at level 1, you'll be rolling 1 dice. Like a short sword does 1d10 damage. So Proficiency 1, you'll be rolling 1d10. Proficiency 2, you'll be rolling 2d10. That's okay. It's a reasonably elegant way to scale damage as you go up, as you increase in power. It might be better if there were more options to upgrade or degrade your proficiency besides leveling, but yeah, maybe I've missed stuff in my couple of read-throughs. Armor, you have to elect to choose to use your armor to decrease the damage that you take. Meh. Some other armor has other effects, like if you wear light armor, your base evasion score, that is the difficulty to hit you, goes up by 1. There are no skills, instead you have experiences. These are kind of like backgrounds, but they're hyper generalized to the point of near meaninglessness. And you get +2 and 1 and +1 in the other character creation. You also get domain cards. Each character type has different domains attached to them. So as a sort of thiefy type, you get 2 particular domains. I forget the names of them right now. It's a bit fiddly. This is where the cards come in. Works much like 4th edition's powers. Again, meh. You can play disabled characters if you want, and it makes absolutely no odds whatsoever to how your character really interacts with the world. And to me, as someone who is disabled, I don't see the point of playing a disabled character if it has no impact on the game. I mean, when we look at stories of disabled people in real life, they are inspiring because they are overcoming adversity. And if there is no adversity to being disabled, where's the story? Some abilities will give you advantage or disadvantage. That gives you plus or minus a d6. That's slightly worse than advantage and disadvantage in D&D by like half a point. But yeah, who's counting, really? One thing that did strike me as particularly silly was if you have bonuses or penalties to your rolls, you're supposed to take tokens equal to those bonuses or penalties. Then you roll your dice, work out your total, and then count the tokens until you reach the appropriate difficulty or don't, I suppose. I don't see the point of this. Maybe it's to help people with dyscalculia, but it's adding additional numbers to track and take care of, increasing the number of calculation processes you're having to do. So I don't know that has much point, really. So even as a backstabbing rogue, right? The backstab just lets me roll additional dice when I have advantage. So kind of stealing the D&D idea there. That lets me do an extra d8 of damage, and I can spend hope up to the maximum of 5 for additional d8s. But no matter how high I roll, I'm only ever going to be doing 3 points of actual hit point damage to someone. Alright, so going through all these various choices, I ended up with Corwin, a character with agility +2, strength +1, finesse +1, instinct -1, presence +0, knowledge +0, an evasion score of 13, damage thresholds of 4, 9, and 14. So you take 1, 2, or 3 hit points of damage. 6 hit points. You start with hope 2, proficiency level 1. My primary weapon is a short sword that does 1d10 damage. Secondary weapon being a dagger, which does 1d8 damage, but it's quick, so I can take a point of stress in order to attack an additional target. I have leather armor, which can reduce the amount of damage I take by 3 and provides me with +1 evasion because it's light armor. You can use that a total of 3 times. I'm not sure whether that's per fight or what, but you get 3 little tick boxes. So you could absorb up to 9 damage, not hit points, damage. My background, which doesn't seem to matter in terms of anything, is that of a city rat brought up on the streets, a lovable street starfish. For experiences, because I wanted to move it away from the rogue thief type, more to warrior type, I took an experience called Sellsword at +2 and Street Urchin at +1 for my thieving type skills. The domains I got were Midnight and Grace. So from the various sources, the special abilities I got were Hide, which is a kind of quasi-magical auto-stealth. As long as you're out of sight and you choose to hide, no one can see you, even if they come round the corner and look. So, yeah. Sneak attack, which we already covered. Sometimes you can get spells as one of these. In one place in the book it says your spellcasting ability is agility. In another part of the book, or on the cards perhaps, it says it's finesse. It's a playtest document, what you're going to do. You can shadow step, so this is a magical ability which I didn't really want, but you can enter one shadow and exit from another shadow within range. Humans get perseverance, which allows them to re-roll a failed experience modded roll by spending 1 hope point. I took Scoundrel, which gives me advantage dealing with criminals, detecting lies, finding a place to lie low. Yeah, all of that sort of thing. And so on and so on. It's meh. It's, the differentiation kind of comes with the powers, but there aren't that many to choose from. That will probably go up, this being an early playtest document. But these are all things that you have to activate, so they're not, for the most part, they're not innate capabilities. The whole system is highly prescriptive. It has set moves and ideas, set sort of downtime actions to engage in. The whole language and setup of the whole thing is just set channeling. It's the same problem that you see with the Powered by the Apocalypse and similar games, where supposedly it's this open freewheeling role-playing system, and then it just isn't when you actually get to it. So I ran a quick fight against a couple of thugs, basic, tier 0 enemies from this booklet. They have daggers that do 2d8 physical damage in combat. The difficulty to hit them is 12. Their breakpoints are 2, 8 and 14, so none of my weapons can do severe damage to them, only major damage, so I can only ever do 2 hit points per hit. They have 5 hit points. They start with 3 stress for some reason that I couldn't particularly fathom, and their experience is Bandit at +2, which apparently never applies to combat rolls for some reason. Also, if they leap down to make an attack, they do additional damage. So I went through a quick little scenario. Starting out, somehow I sneaked into a rival bandit's hideout. I was trying to pick a lock. The difficulty is 15, that's a standard difficulty. So my finesse is +1. I had advantage from one of my background powers for that, which gives me plus a d6. I rolled 6 on the hope die, 3 on the fear die. Those are the 2d12s. Total of 9 plus 1 equals 10. The advantage die +3, it's 13. That's a fail. As an expert, somewhat optimized towards lockpicking, you would hope that I would be able to pick a standard lock more than half the time, even as a starting character. So, the lock won't open, even though I didn't get a fear dice thing. I decided, let's use this as the prompt for combat. So a ringing chime sounds out from inside the chest as an alarm. So I back away, and I make to leave. But a pair of bandits from the gang appear out of the darkness. I'm the player character, so I guess I get to go first. So I lunge at the first bandit. Roll 12 on hope, 10 on fear. I've got +2 from my agility, which we're assuming is the right ability at this point. And I spend a hope for +2 from my sellsword experience. So it's a success with hope with a total of 26. That's a really good roll. That doesn't really affect anything, so I roll my damage, but I got a 10 on my short sword. So I do the maximum damage that I can do to this guy, which is only 2 hit points. Yeah, the maximum I could potentially do would be 3, but only from a backstab. So no matter how good my hit is, even if I was coming at the guy from behind with an assassination strike, can't take him out in anything less than 2 goes. So the first bandit drops to 3 hit points, and is at 4 stress now. Every time you get hit, your stress goes up, and when your stress maxes out, you start taking more hit points. So I follow up with the dagger. That's 5 on hope, 7 on fear, +2 again. That's 16. That's a success with fear. So I do strike him, but the games master, in theory, gets a point that they can now act with. So, well, but I'm not supposed to change turns to the enemies until I fail with fear, apparently. Depending if you go directly by the book, but what the hell, we were trying to see how both sides of this work, so let the guy attack me. So I managed to strike the guy. I did 3 damage on my D10 that time. That's 1 hit point, so he drops to 2 hit points and 5 stress. The bandit behind me attacks me. He doesn't have any backstab abilities or anything. When you're rolling as the GM, you roll a D20. Even if I gave him advantage, he wouldn't be able to hit me because I only rolled a 5, so he just misses. So play passes back to me. I stab the first guard again. That's a 9 on the hope, 5 on the fear, +2, +2, it's 18. Damage roll 9, 2 more damage and 1 stress. So that first guard goes down, presumably dead. I stab back at the guy behind me with my dagger. I roll a 4 + 4, that's a crit. So I hit, roll the damage. Now when you do criticals, you do your roll plus the maximum possible damage you could do with that weapon. So I got a total damage roll of 12. That's still not enough to push it over the upper rank, so that's 2 hit points. So he's down to 3 hit points and 4 stress. My turn again, because turns don't swap until I screw up, apparently. So I follow up with the sword. 8 hope, 7 fear, +2, +2, 19. Another 2 hit points. He's down to 1 hit point left and has 5 stress. So I slit his throat with the dagger. 2 + 8, so 2 hope, 8 fear, +2, +2, it's 14. So that's succeed with fear. So 1 hit point plus 1 stress, 2 more hit points of damage. That's enough to finish that guy off. But with the fear result, the clamour and clatter has attracted more guards, so it's time to escape. So, yeah, is this going to be the D&D killer to end all D&D killers? No, I don't think so. Certainly not in its current state. There's too many oddities. There isn't enough depth to the system. There isn't enough characterization to the system, only in the way you roleplay. But you can't mechanically differentiate characters that much, certainly as starting characters. I mean, that'll improve later on, but ideally you want to start with a strong identity for your character and particular capabilities that they have that differ from those that others have, and that kind of thing just isn't here. There aren't very strong character builds, there isn't very strong character differentiation. This is very squarely aimed at the rainbow-haired she-twink sort of audience of drama school dropouts, and I'm not sure that's a broad audience for players or games masters. It might be for an audience for something like Critical Role, but I'm not especially convinced that it's going to have enough meat on its bones here to sustain a big product line, to keep people engaged and interested long term. Systems like this are great for one-shots or short games, but they're not really that great for these longer term campaigns because they lack depth mechanically. They're shallow, there's not enough granularity, and so characters can end up appearing or mechanically being somewhat identikit, and that's not good. So overall,
no sir, I don't like it.
Postmortem Studios, role-playing games, and a lot more to die for. Post-mort.com